Have you ever wondered what happens in a hospital ward when the orderly's footsteps fade behind the door? My name is Ella Sterling. I worked as a night nurse at the Villa Respite for exactly 3 months, long enough to understand some doors are best never opened and some never closed. But by the time I realized this, it was too late. For everyone. I was 22 in my final year of medical school and desperately needed money. The ad was enticing. Night shifts, minimal contact, high salary, stress tolerance required. I was interviewed by the head nurse, Mrs. Gloria Hardgrave, a woman in her 50s with the arms of a boxer and the look of an accountant calculating losses. She showed me the main buildings. Everything was clean, smelling of bleach and porridge. The patients, mostly elderly people with dementia or severe schizophrenia, seemed docile, almost vegetable-like. We focus on pharmacological sedation, Mrs. Hardgrave explained. The goal is to minimize patient discomfort and staff risk. Don't talk to them, don't ask questions. Just follow procedures and make sure they don't harm themselves. My new job was Ward 6, an isolated unit for difficult but not dangerous patients. It had 10 rooms. My shift lasted from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My shift partner was an elderly orderly named Frank, who seemed to sleep with his eyes open and chewed gum the entire time. The rules are simple, girl, he told me on my first night. Every 2 hours, rounds. Check if they're breathing. If they're not breathing, call me. If they make noise, give them an injection. The injection is ready in the syringe. The number is on the bed. Nothing else is required of you. And remember, Ward 6B. Never go there alone, and never after midnight. Naturally, my attention was immediately drawn to Ward 6B. The door was no different from the others, except for a heavy latch on the outside and a small peephole. That very first night, during rounds, I heard a sound from there, not a scream, a whisper. A man's voice, low, blending with the hum of the ventilation. Dot help. Not them. It wasn't me. I froze. Frank, as if out of nowhere, grabbed my elbow. Don't listen. He's always like that. He's a liar. It's dangerous to listen to him. Let's go. For the first few weeks, I tried to be a model nurse. I tried to be kinder to the patients, smiled, even though all I got in return were blank stares. I noticed something strange. All the patients, even the aggressive ones, had the same medications listed in their charts, in huge doses, powerful antipsychotics and tranquilizers. They turned people into zombies. When I cautiously asked the day nurse about this, she shrugged. It's easier that way. Calm patients are healthy patients. The recovery statistics are excellent. And then there was Mr. Abbott from Ward 3A, an elderly man with Alzheimer's, usually quiet. One night, he grabbed my hand. His fingers were cold and dry, like twigs. He looked at me with suddenly clear eyes and whispered, "They sell silence, girl. The silence in our heads. They need our silence to hide their screams. Don't let them silence you, too." The next day, Mr. Abbott was gone. The chart read, acute heart failure. But that morning, I saw 2 strangers in white coats enter his room, and Frank nervously smoked by the exit. My curiosity turned to alarm. I began keeping my own notes. I noticed a strange pattern. Patients who showed any consciousness, who began to understand something or ask questions, quickly worsened and either died from sudden complications or were transferred to another location that no one mentioned. But no one ever entered room 6B. Food was served on a special tray. Medications were administered intravenously through a tube running into the hallway. One night, when Frank fell asleep in his room, which was strictly forbidden, I gave in to an impulse. I went to the door of room 6B. I put my ear to it. Heavy, hoarse breathing came from behind the door, and the same whisper. But now I made out the words, "A witness." They know what I know about the bill in Switzerland, about the fire in the old building. Don't let them do the same to you. My heart sank. A fire in the old building. I'd heard about that. 10 years before I arrived, there had been a fire at the hospital that killed several patients. Faulty wiring was blamed. I recoiled from the door as if I'd been burned, and at that moment, an alarm went off at the other end of the hallway. One of the patients had ripped a bed switch off. Frank woke up, snoring, and ran there. I was left alone in front of door 6B, and the peephole on the door suddenly went out. Someone was watching me from inside. I froze. And through the door, I heard not a whisper anymore, but a clear, chilling voice. "Ella, they killed the nurse before you." Sandra. She was asking questions too. They said she'd quit. Her body was in the wall, in the boiler room. Check it if you're not afraid. The next day, trembling, I went to the boiler room. It was a damp, abandoned basement, and on one wall, there was indeed a fresh coat of cement, clearly different from the old masonry. Nearby lay a torn plastic badge. I picked it up. On it was a faded but legible name, Sandra M. I was terrified, but also trapped. Leaving would immediately arouse suspicion. Besides, I was in debt. I decided to gather irrefutable evidence. I began secretly photographing prescription logs, where medication dosages were deliberately exceeded all conceivable limits. I recorded a conversation between two orderlies who bragged about how they calmed an old woman by knocking out her teeth and chalked it up to a suicide attempt. The most terrifying thing I realized was that this wasn't a system of evil in the classic sense. It was a system of convenience. The patient died, less work. The patient fell silent, less noise. Mrs. Hardgrave and the doctor, who came once a week for show, simply created a perfect, silent slaughterhouse where first human dignity died, and a little later, the body. I contacted the same Sandra M. through social media. Her profile was empty, but her sister showed up. In a short, nervous conversation, she confirmed Sandra had been working at the villa and suddenly disappeared, sending a strange text message. "Don't look for me. They're everywhere." The police filed a report, but found nothing. I decided to act. My target was the patient from 6B. I learned his name, Arthur Layton. 10 years ago, he had been a well-known financial auditor. He ended up here after a nervous breakdown. Rumor had it he was in charge of the hospital's affairs and might have been aware of financial fraud. His madness was a very convenient way to keep him quiet. One night, after switching Frank's sleeping pills in his coffee, I took the key to 6B stolen a week earlier and entered. The room. It wasn't a hospital room. It was a cell. Bare walls, a mattress on the floor, an IV attached to a chair, and him. Thin as a skeleton with long uncut hair, but his eyes were sharp and clear, not the eyes of a madman. "You've come," he said without preamble. "You have 20 minutes until their medication wears off in my system. Listen, this hospital is a facade. They don't treat, they archive. They bring inconvenient people here, those who saw something, those who might testify in court, those with inheritance rights that relatives want. They are slowly sedated until they die. The doctor signs off on the death as natural causes. The bills in Switzerland are mounting. The fire in the old building wasn't an accident. There were patients there who were supposed to be examined by an independent commission. They burned to death. Every single one. And Mrs. Hardgrave got a big bonus for it. He told me everything. Names, dates, account numbers. I recorded it on a tape recorder, my hand shaking. "Why weren't you killed?" I asked. He smiled bitterly. "I'm an insurance agent. I know too much, and if anything happens to me, my information will be passed on to certain authorities. That's why they're keeping me here, in this hell, turning me into a vegetable. But I resist, every day. This is my only victory." I left the room, confident that I now had everything I needed to unleash this hell. But I underestimated the system. Frank woke up prematurely. He saw the open door of Ward 6B and me emerging from it. His sleepy face was contorted not with anger, but with fear. For himself. "You've ruined everything, you idiot," he hissed. "Now we're all finished." He didn't attack me. He pressed the silent alarm button. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Hardgrave appeared in the ward, not alone. She was accompanied by 2 orderlies, the same ones who had boasted of their pacification. No shouting, no threats. Her face was stony. "Miss Sterling, you have violated safety regulations. You pose a danger to the patient and to yourself. You clearly need rest and possibly treatment. You appear to be having a nervous breakdown. I'm so sorry." They immobilized me, not roughly, but professionally, like an aggressive patient. They injected something cold into my thigh. The world spun around me. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was Mrs. Hardgrave's face leaning over me. "Nobody's looking for nurses, dear. Nobody. You'll just disappear, like Sandra, like so many others. You're part of the silence now. Welcome to Ward 6. I woke up in a ward, but not 6B, a regular ward. I was wearing a hospital gown. On the nightstand were vials with my name on them. The diagnosis: acute psychotic disorder with paranoid ideation. The doctor I saw for the first time explained to me, convincingly, and with genuine compassion, how I'd harmed myself through exhaustion and posed a danger to the patients. They began treating me with the same drugs. I felt my thoughts becoming fuzzy, my memories blurring, my own voice in my head fading. I was lucky, only a miracle. I had an agreement with a friend. If I didn't contact her within 8 hours, she would raise the alarm. She came to the hospital with the police. They found me. But there was no proof of my words. The recorder was gone. The photographs were erased. Arthur Layton, when they came to see him, was sitting, staring at the wall, drooling. He was cured completely. Mrs. Hardgrave presented all the documents, showed the CCTV footage, without me, of course, near Ward 6B, and attributed it all to my mental disorder. I was discharged, but the label remained. No one believed it. No one. World Salvation Villa is still open. Sometimes I see their ad, care and comfort for your elderly relatives, 2-4 hour medical supervision. And at night, I dream the same thing. I'm in my old uniform, walking down the corridor of Ward 6. I approach the door. The peephole darkens from the inside, and Arthur's voice, now hopeless, whispers, "Why didn't you do anything? Why does no one ever do anything?" And I wake up, and I listen to the silence in my apartment for a long time, because now I know that the worst thing isn't the screams in a mental hospital. The worst thing is a comfortable, well-appointed silence, which is expensive, and which someone will definitely buy for someone they need to forget. And we, from the outside, will pretend we know nothing, because it's more convenient and quieter, always quieter.